It was more than a decade ago when there was an assassination attempt on Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
This spring, Gabby Giffords' Won't Back Down documentary premiered at South by Southwest. Film critic Powell talks to the directors of the documentary and Giffords' inspiring story. Take a look.
Julie and Betsy, thank you for joining me to talk about Gabby Giffords' Won't Back Down, your newest documentary. You focused on a lot of strong women with some of your documentaries, some of my favorites throughout the years, Justice Ginsburg being one of them and Julia Childs another. Tell me about not finding Gabby Giffords, but knowing about her story and what compelled you to tell her story.
Well, you know, she's such a spectacular person, and we knew a little bit about her story. Of course, like all Americans, we remember that tragic day in 2011 when she was shot. We understood that she had recovered to an extent and that she was associated with an organization called Giffords. But until the producer of our film, Lisa Ersbaumer, reached out to us and suggested this subject as a documentary, and we got to meet Gabby over a Zoom and her husband, Mark Kelly, we didn't understand really how extraordinary her story was and how intense and beautiful her journey from a medically induced coma to being unable to walk and talk to who she is now. We just we hadn't known how incredible that journey was and how much of it was documented on videotape.
Right. Betsy, can you talk about this a little bit with us? Because Mark is the one who really supplied a lot of this incredible footage of Gabby's recovery.
Yeah, early on in the process of meeting Gabby and Mark, we discovered that he had set up a camera and a tripod in her room to document her slow recovery. I mean, this was just weeks after the shooting, and at a time when people didn't know how much progress Gabby was going to make, but Mark had a lot of confidence. He said, you know, Gabby's going to recover, and when she does, she's going to want to see this because she might not remember what's going on, and it's pretty extraordinary. So over the next months, he just kept rolling. We learned that he was able to do this because as an astronaut, he'd been trained as a cameraman, because they learn how to take their own cameras and do their own video up in space. So he had the technical ability, and he just had the, I guess, emotional insight and faith to do this. And that sure was lucky for us as documentarians, because that journey, those weeks and months are pretty illustrative of what it takes to come back from such a devastating injury.
You know, unfortunately, you know, with everything going on in our world today, mass shootings, and Gabby Giffords was the target of this mass shooting back in 2011. Gun control is still something that we are addressing, haven't made a ton of progress at this point. Gabby Giffords, in your documentary, you show how she reaches across the aisle, and she is that bridge to bring two sides together no matter what their viewpoints. What are your hopes that people will take away from this movie and maybe move us forward a little bit with where we are with gun control?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Gabby, once she had recovered after a couple of years and the horrible Newtown tragedy happened, she saw an opportunity to start an organization and to begin activism that was really trained toward the majority of Americans who believe in reasonable gun safety measures, even people who are gun owners or NRA members. I mean, that has been Gabby's focus, and she's been part of a movement that has grown up as these mass shootings have continued. Organizations in every one of these places have started up of bereaved parents and friends and just people who cannot understand why we're allowing this to continue to happen. As we were finishing our film, there was actually some movement toward gun legislation. The first significant bill was passed in nearly 30 years in the wake of the two shootings, the shootings in Uvalde, Texas, and in Buffalo. And then, of course, there was another one in Chicago after that, which has it's a modest step toward gun legislation, but a very important one. And I think that Gabby and others feel that it can be just the beginning. That, you know, it's not universal background checks, but it is background checks for people 18 to 21. And you know, Gabby would like to increase that. You know, they got rid of this you know, boyfriend exception, like just because you're not married to a person doesn't mean that, you know, that these kind of protections shouldn't apply for women whose partners are violent. So there was you know, a significant step, and I think that Gabby Giffords, her organization, and others played a big role in that.
Yeah, you know, one thing that Gabby likes to say about her rehabilitation is, I put one foot in front of the other, I take one step, and then I take another. And that's really the same approach that she and a lot of the other groups advocating to make some kind of a dent in the gun violence epidemic in our country take. It's a small step, but you can't, you know, you can't travel a mile without taking the first few steps.
Right. Beautifully put, and doesn't surprise me that that is Gabby's attitude and reaction toward all of this. Thank you, ladies, both so much for this incredible interview and making yet another powerful film about a wonderfully resilient woman.